I'm Richard Morrison, 67 years old, and 3 weeks ago I stood at my daughter's grave on the coldest morning Seattle had seen all year. The rain mixed with my tears as they lowered her casket into the ground. Sarah was only 39. Breast cancer took her in 8 months flat. My wife Margaret died 5 years ago from the same disease. Now it was just me and my son-in-law, Derek. At the reception, after the funeral, Derek pulled me aside in the hallway of his house. The house I'd helped him buy. The house where Sarah had planted roses in the backyard every spring. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Richard, I need you out of here in 2 weeks. This is my house now, and I'm moving on with my life. You understand, right?" I just nodded. I picked up the small duffel bag I'd brought with my funeral clothes and walked out the front door into that cold November rain. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just left. Here's what Derek didn't know about me. I wasn't just some retired plumber who fixed his leaky pipes and babysat his kids. But we'll get to that. Let me back up 6 years. When Sarah met Derek at a hospital fundraiser, I had my doubts. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep, always talking about his commissions and his sales targets. Drove a leased BMW he couldn't really afford. But Sarah loved him, and she was happy. So I kept my mouth shut. That's what fathers do. They got married at a vineyard in Woodinville. I paid for half the wedding, $28,000. Derek's parents paid for the rehearsal dinner at Applebee's. I should have seen the math there, but I was focused on Sarah's smile. 3 years into their marriage, they wanted to buy a house. The market was crazy, and they couldn't get approved for enough. Derek came to me with a proposal. If I co-signed and put down 30%, they'd make all the payments and eventually refinance me off the loan. I put down $95,000. We structured it so I owned 30% of the property legally. It was all documented properly because I've learned over the years to always document everything. Sarah got sick 2 years after they bought the house. Stage 4 breast cancer, just like her mother. I took early retirement from my plumbing business to help take care of her. I drove her to chemo 3 times a week. I sat with her when Derek had to travel for work. I held her hand when she couldn't keep food down. During those months, Derek changed. He became distant, started staying out late. I'd see charges on his credit card statements. Sarah had me helping with their bills from restaurants and bars I knew he wasn't taking my dying daughter to. But I said nothing. Sarah needed peace, not more problems. 2 weeks before she died, Sarah asked me to promise her something. We were sitting in her bedroom, the one that smelled like lavender oil and medicine. She gripped my hand with what little strength she had left and said, "Dad, make sure Derek's okay. He's not as strong as he seems. Promise me you'll look after him." I promised. I always kept my promises to Sarah. She died on a Tuesday morning. I was holding one hand. Derek was on his phone with the other. I'll never forget that. So there I was, 3 weeks after burying my daughter, standing in the rain with nowhere to go. I got in my 2006 Ford F-150, the one with the rusted wheel wells and the dent in the passenger door, and drove to a Motel 6 off I-5. The room smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams. It cost $67 a night. I sat on that lumpy bed and I cried. Not because I didn't have options, but because Derek thought I didn't have options. Because he'd looked at me and seen someone he could just erase from his life. Someone disposable. The next morning, I called my lawyer. His name is Thomas Chen, and we'd worked together for 23 years. "Tom," I said, "I need you to pull the deed on 4,782 Maple Ridge Drive, and I need you to do it quietly." "The house you co-signed?" he asked. "That's the one." "Richard, are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure about anything in my life." See, here's what Derek didn't know. I wasn't a plumber. Well, I was. But that was just the business name. Morrison Plumbing and Property Management was actually a real estate investment company. I owned 17 rental properties across King County. My net worth was somewhere north of $4.2 million. I drove the old truck and wore Carhartt jackets because that's who I was. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Sarah knew, Margaret knew. But we'd kept it quiet because money changes people, and we wanted people in our lives who loved us for us, not for what we had. I spent that first week in the motel doing research. I had Tom pull all the financial records on the house. Derek had made exactly 4 mortgage payments in the 2 years since Sarah got sick. 4. I'd been making the payments directly to the bank, through an LLC I controlled. Derek thought the payments were on autopilot from his account. I also had my private investigator, Frank Delacroix, do some digging on Derek. Frank was former FBI, specialized in financial crimes. What he found made my blood boil. Derek had a girlfriend. Her name was Brittany, 26 years old, worked as a bottle service girl at a club downtown. They'd been together for 8 months, since before Sarah died. There were photos of them in Vegas, in Cancun, at expensive restaurants, all on credit cards that were charging 23% interest. But it got worse. Derek had taken out a $75,000 home equity line of credit on the house, without my knowledge or signature, which he needed as a co-owner. He'd forged my signature on the documents. That's a felony. The money was gone. Spent on trips, on Brittany, on a boat he'd bought and docked at the marina. He'd even bought her a Mercedes. Not least, bought. Frank also found something else. Derek had already put the house on the market. There was a listing going live in 3 days. He'd hired a real estate agent and everything. The asking price was $685,000. He was planning to pocket my equity, all $95,000 plus whatever appreciation there'd been. Plus, he'd get the $75,000 HELOC paid off from the sale proceeds before the bank realized the signature was forged. I sat in that motel room and stared at Frank's report for 3 hours. I thought about Sarah, about her asking me to look after Derek. I thought about the promise I'd made her. Then I made some calls. On day 8, Derek's real estate agent posted the listing. Beautiful photos, professional staging. The description mentioned recently renovated kitchen and spa-like master bathroom. All the renovations I'd paid for when Sarah was too weak to cook in the old kitchen. The house got 47 showing requests in the first 24 hours. Derek was thrilled. He posted on Facebook about new beginnings and exciting chapters. Brittany commented with heart emojis. On day 12, Derek had his first open house. Apparently 30 people showed up. There were 2 offers by Monday morning, both over asking. Derek chose the higher one, $710,000, all cash, 14-day close. The buyers were a young tech couple relocating from California. Derek called me that Monday afternoon. First time he'd called since the funeral. "Richard, I wanted to let you know the house sold. It all happened really fast. Unfortunately, after paying off the mortgage and the HELOC and the agent fees, there's not much left. Maybe $15,000. I'll send you a check for your share once everything closes." "My share," I repeated. "Yeah, for helping out with the down payment. I really appreciate everything you did for Sarah. She was lucky to have you as a dad." "When does it close?" I asked. 2 weeks from Friday. "Listen, I gotta run, but I'll be in touch." He hung up. I called Tom. "It's time," I said. The next morning, Derek woke up to find a notice of lis pendens filed against the property. For those who don't know, that's a legal document that says there's a pending lawsuit affecting the title to a property. It effectively freezes any sale. His real estate agent called him panicking. The buyer's attorney had seen the filing, and they were pulling their offer immediately. Nobody buys a house with a cloud on the title. Derek called me screaming. "What the hell did you do? You can't just file liens against my property." "Our property," I said calmly. "I own 30%, remember? It's on the deed." "And I didn't file a lien, Derek. I filed a lawsuit for partition of jointly owned property, breach of fiduciary duty, and forgery. Would you like me to explain what those mean?" Silence. "The partition suit means I'm forcing a sale of the property, and I'll get my share. The breach of fiduciary duty is because you took out a HELOC without my consent and spent it on your girlfriend. And the forgery charge, well, that's criminal. That's the one where you forged my signature on the HELOC documents." More silence. "You have 2 options," I continued. "Option 1. You buy me out of my 30% at current market value. That's $213,000, plus the $95,000 you owe me for making 2 years of mortgage payments you didn't make. So $308,000 total. Oh, and you pay back the $75,000 HELOC that you fraudulently obtained. Option 2. We sell the house, split the proceeds according to our ownership percentage, and I file criminal charges for the forgery. You'd be looking at 5 years minimum. I don't have that kind of money, Derek said quietly. I know you don't. Which brings us to option 3. You deed the house to me entirely, right now. You walk away with nothing. In exchange, I don't file criminal charges, and I don't sue you for the mortgage payments. You disappear from my life completely. That's insane. This is my house. No, Derek. It's the house my daughter lived in. The house I paid for so she could have a home while she was dying. The house you were going to sell to pay for trips to Cancun with your girlfriend while Sarah was getting chemo. I let that hang in the air. I have photos, Derek. Frank's very thorough. Photos of you and Brittany in Mexico last March. That was when Sarah was in the hospital for that infection, remember? When I sat with her for 72 straight hours while you were at a sales conference in Phoenix. Except you weren't in Phoenix. You were in Cabo San Lucas with a 26-year-old bottle girl. I heard him breathing on the other end. You have 24 hours to decide, I said. After that, I file everything civil and criminal. The forgery charge alone will destroy your pharmaceutical sales career. Nobody's going to hire a felon who forges signatures on financial documents. He hung up on me. 23 hours later, Tom called me. Derek's attorney just sent over a quitclaim deed. He's deeding you his 70% interest in the property. It's over. But it wasn't over. 2 days after Derek signed over the house, I got a call from Seattle PD. Detective Maria Gonzalez introduced herself and asked if I could come down to the station to answer some questions about Sarah's death. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? I'd rather discuss it in person, Mr. Morrison. I drove to the station in my old truck, my mind racing. When I got there, Detective Gonzalez led me to an interview room. She was in her early 40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to be direct with you. We've received some information about your daughter's death that's concerning. I need to ask you some questions about her final weeks. What kind of information? She opened a file. Did Sarah ever mention feeling unusually sick after eating or drinking anything specific? My heart started pounding. She was sick all the time. The chemo made her nauseous constantly. Was there any pattern to when she felt worse? I thought back. She always said she felt terrible after Derek made her his special smoothies. He said they were supposed to help with the nausea. Ginger and protein powder and other stuff. Detective Gonzalez made a note. How often did he make these smoothies? Every morning for the last 6 weeks of her life. Why? What's this about? She looked at me carefully. Mr. Morrison, we've opened an investigation into your daughter's death. We received an anonymous tip suggesting that her death might not have been entirely due to cancer. The room started spinning. What are you saying? I'm saying we're exhuming Sarah's body for additional toxicology testing. The initial autopsy showed elevated levels of several substances that were attributed to her cancer treatment. But given new information, we want to rule out other possibilities. What substances? I can't discuss that yet. But I need to ask, did Derek have access to any medications or chemicals that wouldn't normally be in a home? He was a pharmaceutical sales rep. He had samples of everything, pain medications, anti-nausea drugs, all kinds of things. He kept them in a locked cabinet in his car. She wrote that down. Did he ever mention anything about wanting to accelerate Sarah's passing? Maybe framing it as mercy? I remembered something. One night, about 3 months before Sarah died, I'd overheard Derek on the phone. I was staying over to help with overnight care. I'd gone downstairs to get water and heard him in his office. He was saying something like, I know it's hard, but it won't be much longer. Then we can be together. At the time, I thought he was talking to his mother about Sarah's prognosis. Now, I told Detective Gonzalez about the conversation. Do you know who he was talking to? I assumed his mother. But now I'm wondering if it was Brittany. She asked me a dozen more questions. About Derek's behavior, about the insurance policies, about the timeline of Sarah's decline. I answered everything truthfully, my mind reeling. As I was leaving, she said, "Mr. Morrison, I shouldn't tell you this, but the anonymous tip came from someone who worked at the pharmacy where Derek got his samples. They said he'd been requesting unusual quantities of certain medications that, when combined with chemotherapy drugs, can cause acute organ failure that mimics cancer progression. We're looking into it." I drove back to my motel in a daze. My daughter, my baby girl, had Derek. 3 weeks later, Detective Gonzalez called me. "Can you come back to the station?" When I got there, she had another man with her. "This is Detective James Park from the Major Crimes Unit. We need to talk to you about the investigation." We sat in the same interview room. Detective Park slid a folder across the table. The toxicology results came back. Sarah had lethal levels of fentanyl in her system, not therapeutic levels for pain management. Lethal levels. Enough to cause respiratory failure. I couldn't breathe, but she died from the cancer, the doctors said. "The cancer would have killed her eventually," Detective Gonzalez said gently. "But the fentanyl killed her faster, much faster. Her death certificate is being amended to homicide." "Derek," I whispered. "We obtained warrants for Derek's phone records, his credit card statements, and his computer," Detective Park continued. "We found extensive searches for lethal dose fentanyl, how to make cancer death look natural, and life insurance payout timeline. We also found text messages between Derek and Brittany, discussing how much money they'd have once Sarah passed. He showed me the texts. I read them with shaking hands. Derek, the doctor said, maybe 3 more months. Brittany, that's so long, baby. I miss you. Derek, I know. I'm working on it. Brittany, what does that mean? Derek, let's just say we might have access to the money sooner than the doctor thinks. The insurance policy pays double if she dies this year because of some premium thing. I pushed the folder away. I was going to be sick. There's more, Detective Gonzalez said. We checked the home equity line of credit. Derek took it out 4 months before Sarah died. He forged your signature, like you said. But here's the thing. He also forged Sarah's signature. She was too weak to sign anything by that point. He basically stole from both of you while planning to murder his dying wife. When are you arresting him? I asked. We arrested him this morning. He's being charged with first-degree murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and elder abuse for the financial crimes against you. Elder abuse. I was 67 years old. Technically, I qualified. His bail is set at $2 million, Detective Park said. Given the evidence and flight risk, the judge wouldn't reduce it. He can't make bail. He'll be in King County Jail until trial. I nodded, numb. Mr. Morrison, Detective Gonzalez said softly. I'm sorry. I know this doesn't bring Sarah back, but we're going to make sure he pays for what he did. The trial was 4 months later. I sat in the courtroom every single day. Derek's parents were there too, looking confused and broken. They'd mortgaged their house, trying to make his bail, but couldn't raise enough. The prosecution laid it all out. Derek had been having an affair for over a year. He'd taken out life insurance on Sarah, worth $750,000, without telling her policies that paid double for death within a specific time window. He'd forged signatures to access equity in the house. And he'd systematically poisoned his wife with fentanyl samples he'd acquired through his pharmaceutical sales contacts, mixing them into smoothies he'd insisted on making for her every morning. The medical examiner testified that Sarah's organs had shown signs of acute fentanyl toxicity, but because she was already dying of cancer, it had been missed initially. It was only the anonymous tip from Derek's pharmacy, contact a woman who'd grown suspicious of his sample requests, that prompted the deeper investigation. Brittany testified for the prosecution in exchange for immunity. She admitted Derek had told her he was helping Sarah pass more peacefully and that they'd have money soon. She claimed she didn't know he was actually murdering Sarah, but the texts suggested otherwise. The jury didn't believe her tears. Derek's defense tried to argue that Sarah had been taking the fentanyl herself, that she'd been in pain and wanted to die. But the prosecution showed that all of Sarah's medications were accounted for through her oncology clinic, and Derek had never reported finding her with additional drugs. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge let me speak. I stood up, looked at Derek, and said, Sarah asked me to take care of you. She made me promise. And I kept that promise, didn't I? I took care of everything. I found out what you did. I made sure you'd pay for it. Not just by losing the house, but by losing everything. Your freedom, your future. Your legacy will be that of a man who murdered his dying wife for money. Sarah loved you, and you killed her for $750,000 and a girlfriend. I hope every single day for the rest of your life you remember that. Derek was sentenced to life without parole. After the trial, I sold the house on Maple Ridge Drive. I couldn't live there. Too many memories of Sarah. It sold for $695,000. I donated every penny to the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance in Sarah's name, specifically for a fund that helps cancer patients whose families abandon them. I moved into a smaller place in Ballard, near the water. I started volunteering at a hospice center, sitting with terminal patients who don't have family. I hold their hands. I bring them books. I make sure they're not alone. Derek's parents reached out to me once. His mother called, crying, asking if I could find it in my heart to forgive him. I told her gently that forgiveness wasn't mine to give. That was between Derek and God, and eventually between Derek and Sarah when they met again in whatever comes next. I still visit Sarah's grave every Sunday. I bring flowers, roses, the kind she used to plant. I tell her about my week. I tell her that I kept my promise to take care of Derek, just maybe not in the way she'd imagined. I'm 67 years old. I've got my health, more money than I need, and 17 rental properties that more or less run themselves. I drive my old truck. I wear my Carhartt jackets. I eat breakfast at the same diner every morning where nobody knows I'm worth millions. And every single day, I think about that moment at Sarah's funeral when Derek told me I had 2 weeks to disappear. When he looked at me and saw someone worth nothing, someone disposable. He was wrong about so many things, but mostly he was wrong about what a father would do for his daughter. Even after she's gone, I'm still protecting her. I'm still fighting for her. And I made damn sure that the man who killed her will spend the rest of his life paying for it. People say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Justice is best served with patience, documentation, and a really good lawyer. And in the end, justice was served. I just wish Sarah was here to see it. But I kept my promise, baby girl. I took care of Derek, just like you asked.